Growth is intentional and impact is inevitable. So we ask that you don't just watch, engage with us. Don't just listen, but learn with us. And don't just sit back. Come take a seat at the table. We are just getting started. Good evening, everyone, and welcome back to Broadcasting Results with Rouse. And we're back at it again. Your host, Turquoise Rouse, and today we are bringing you a very powerful yet timing conversation around leadership, education, and the future of South Carolina. So joining us today is your very own Miss Sylvia Wright. You've seen her all over, knocking on doors and doing her thing. She's a candidate for South Carolina Superintendent for Education. And we want you to know that this conversation tonight, we want to go beyond headlines, okay? We want to dive into the vision. We want to talk about leadership. And we want to talk about what it takes to move policy into practice. So now, Sylvia, this office obviously is just more than a title.
Yeah.
It brings very much impact as we talk about classrooms, we talk about teachers, talk about our students and the funding decision, but yet public trust. So tonight, I want the voters to hear directly from you and not a slogan, but substance. So I want to thank you for joining us tonight. And it gives me great pleasure to have you on the platform because you've been out for quite some time now. Before we get started, I want to make sure that we put out this disclaimer as it relates to this platform. Broadcasting Results with Rouse provides a fair opportunity for all of our guests to share their story. And so we do not endorse any candidate or affiliation. All guests' requests are reviewed, and we make a final decision, which is made at the discretion of this platform. So, again, broadcasting results with Rouse does not endorse any candidate or affiliation, not individuals, but the platform itself. And so, we want to get right on in it. And before we talk about policies, budgets, politics, I think people very much deserve to know the person that is seeking to lead them. So across South Carolina, who may be, learning your name, Sylvia, and those that may have already met you beyond the campaign, I want to first start off to ask the question: what shaped you for the passion for education?
What shaped me? I would have to say my experiences. And when I first graduated, and what I wanted to do, what it wasn't teaching, it was I wanted to first be a magazine editor, and the second thing was nursing. Going to nursing, but I got married young, and he was in the army, and so we were at our first duty station, and I was working in the Sunday with the Sunday school group. And one day when I was sitting after Sunday school class, I had, my Bible open. I was still there, and teacher came to mind. Teacher, um, leader, and there's one more, but I remember writing it in my Bible, right? And I was like, teacher, I never wanted to be a teacher. And I said this too because I wasn't the best student. So I knew that karma would come back to me. And it did. But from that moment, I, pursued teaching because I always love working with young kids, like with the youth. The youth have always been my passion because, like I said, I wasn't the best kid. So I wanted to be that mentor, that person for them, because I know that when the kids are acting out, it's coming from a place of hurt, or there is something deeper when kids are acting out. I know that because that's how it was for me. So I think just wanting to be that mentor and, help kids grow beyond, like, get past this, what they're going through, and continue to help them, you know, elevate their learning.
Okay, sounds fair. I also believe, when we talk about, like you say, pretty much having the experience of what you want to see from what you pretty much went through. And none of us have gone through a journey and been perfect, right? So we
Hmm.
use the lessons that we've learned to continue to be better for the lives that we want to be impactful for.
Yes.
Um, And so when you look back, was there a very defining? I know you mentioned your Bible and writing it down, but was there any very defining maybe moment, mentor, or another experience that made you realize that okay, education is my calling?
I think my turning point was it was my first I was finishing my first 5 years, and I remember doing research, and it said like if a teacher makes it if they if they can make it past the first 5 years, then they'll stay in, right? Because that's the challenging. So I did experience all the things that what makes a teacher want to leave, and I actually did want to leave because I was tired of the disrespect. I was just basically all the things that you read about that make teachers want to leave. I experienced it. Tried to leave, realized that that's where God had me.
Mm,
um, because I did apply for another job, but it wasn't like teaching. With teaching, you have the interview, get the job. This particular position, you had to go through 3 rounds of interviews. And so I didn't realize that it was the first round. So I'll never forget after the interview, I went back to my car. It was raining. I was sitting there like crying because I felt stuck in education. And what when I went back to teaching that next year, even though I felt this feeling of being stuck, then doors started opening for me,
mm,
like leadership positions. I started moving up in leadership, and because I also taught, and I was a leader, a school leader, and I also taught. So I was still connected to the classroom. So I just had a different perspective of the classroom after that experience. And the biggest impact for me is watching students when the light bulb goes off,
mm.
like seeing them thinking and then getting it. I started seeing that a lot more because, like I said, my perspective changed. When you are dissatisfied in a position, that has an impact on your perspective. But then once you realize, like, and for me, I realized that this was my calling. This is where God wanted me to be. So I started being more cognizant of my impact, of the effect that the teaching and the strategies and everything had on students. And that's what really lit the fire for me. I want to make sure that, every kid gets what they deserve.
That's very important that every kid get what they deserve. So we want to keep that in mind. And as we continue to wrap up this campaign season, we realize you and I both can witness that it can be very demanding.
Hmm.
Traveling, criticism,
Yeah.
expectations, public scrutiny.
Hmm.
So, what keeps Sylvia centered and grounded during a season such as this?
Knowing my calling. So I was sitting in this office, and, I have a grandson. He's like my motivation, like for really wanting to, what I want for my grandson, I want for every kid in South Carolina. But I was sitting here in this office looking up private preschools for him because pre-K is income based. And, if there's a certain need, a developmental need. And so I knew my grandson wouldn't qualify for that. And so private preschool would be our route for, making sure he got pre-K. And so as I was sitting here looking up private pre-K, I felt a conviction. And the conviction was so deep that I remember I sat back in this chair like this. And because I was like, the thought of what about the other kids came to my mind. And then I was like, well, okay, Laura, what would you have me to do? And the state superintendent came to mind. And I never thought about being a state superintendent of education because that was always up here. My goal was more, I wanted to be in the district office. That's what I had all the training for. Um, but I knew that that was the calling, my calling. And so I have challenges every day. Um, like you said, there's scrutiny. There's, always under a microscope, which I knew that was coming because I'm in the public spotlight. Um, but no matter what happens, I know my calling, and so that's what's driving me. I know all I have to do is put in the work, and the rest is already done.
Ooh, I love it. Love it. So I definitely want to say thank you for sharing that foundation because I think it's very important, again, for people to know Sylvia. Like they can feel the heart, of you, the passion that you have, the drive, not just for your grandson, but what you want to see for
Mhm.
every child out there. So that tells me you want to see that for my nephews that
Yes.
are in public schools. And I
Mhm.
appreciate you, you know, seeing yourself as a servant that wants to lead, but you don't want to leave no child without. So
Mhm.
I appreciate that. And so, because obviously leadership in public system can also start off with a personal conviction, and I was glad for you to mention that you know your experience coming through.
Mhm.
While you might have ran a little bit in regards to, hey, I just want to be, district level. It was that nudge, right?
Mhm.
So that also allows people to know where you stand at, what you're calling in regards to your faith, and I
Mhm.
appreciate you being open with that.
Mhm.
Um, so we want to shift a little bit. Now that we've kind of gotten a little to know a little bit about you, I want to kind of go into the vision and why that matters. So, why now? Why do you feel like this is the right season for you to
Mm.
seek this role?
South Carolina ranks 43rd in education, and we've been at the bottom for the past 20 years. So we can't just say, oh, this current superintendent is blah, blah, blah. No, it's been like we've systematically been just failing kids here in South Carolina for a long time.
Hmm.
And so now is the time for change. If we continue down this path that we're heading with the Trump agenda, with Project 2025 that the current state superintendent is aligned with, then we're creating essentially a divide. And I'm not talking about a black and white or, you know, Hispanic, whatever. I'm not talking about a racial divide. I'm talking about a divide of have and have not. Who
Mm,
has access? Who has the money? And then who's left in a system where the money's being taken out and the resources are being pulled out for this group right here? So
mm,
that's the divide that's being created. And so it's important that South Carolinians know that if we continue down this path with the current superintendent, that's the outcome. I'm the opposite. I want to elevate every child in South Carolina. I want to meet every child where they're at. We create an individualized plan for them, which this can be done. We have
mm.
the technology, the funding, all of that. It just takes leadership, being strategic and intentional, put them on the pathway to grow them, because that's our goal, is to grow students and make sure like they're prepared for the future that they want to achieve, instead of us telling them, hey, you're going to do this. No, they tell us, this is what I'm interested in, so we create that. We help them get to where they want to go, regardless if it's college, career, military. It's their choice. We provide the resources and support to support them.
Thank you for that. And that just draw me to, when we look across social media, we hear from parent groups and even conversations in the community. People often say, education is at a crossroad.
Hmm.
And you kind of just basically stated that. And so when you look at South Carolina's education system today, what do you believe is working that should be protected and strengthened?
I think we're trending in the right direction as far as literacy, like with the implementation of this a phonics, phonics based learning how to read. We're trending in the right direction, increasing teacher pay. We're trending in the right direction of improving the working conditions for our educators. Um, those are three key things. Um, but the issue with that is we're trending in the right direction, but a lot of it is just talk.
Okay.
Um, it's time that we don't just talk about it, that we put things in place to make sure that it's happening. And I'm not talking about being, all in micromanaging. I'm talking about just making sure people are held accountable,
Right.
and that's something that's missing right now. There's a
Okay.
lot of talk, but there's not a lot of holding people accountable. There's not a lot of transparency. That's at the state level and the local level.
Okay.
Yeah.
And so while that is very much important, what do you possibly think that is no longer serving our students and need to change immediately?
The book bans, definitely. Um, that whole statewide book ban. Now I know the local areas, they had their own book banning policies.
Hmm.
We need to return, I want to return that to the local level. And the reason why that's an issue is because it's been a distraction.
Okay.
Um, and honestly, we need to restore the joy of reading, not just, the science of reading and teaching kids how to read, like methodically. I'm all for that, but it's reading is more than that. Reading is fun. Reading is an adventure. There's a joy in reading. And so I feel like we have like that, you know, I don't want, it's not, the word isn't punishment, but it's more of forcing kids to read, but
Mm.
we've taken the fun out of it.
Gotcha.
I can't grasp the word that I want to use, but that's the vibe that I feel right now in our schools when I see kids doing this reading program. It's very like methodical, which is fine because that's what it takes for them to learn to read. But there's not that joy piece
Okay.
where they're learning to read what they enjoy reading.
Have
Okay, this is
having
how you
fun with
read.
it.
Okay, we're teaching you how to read, but also get a book, learn, start exploring what topics you like.
Okay. Sounds good. I'm going to tune in right quick. Again, thank you all who have tuned in thus far with broadcasting results with Rouse. And you all sitting here with us tonight is Miss Sylvia Wright, our South Carolina Superintendent for Education. So if you are just tuning in or already have been on for some time, if you have any questions, we ask that you drop it in the comments and we will periodically check it so we can make sure that you stay engaged and possibly get the answers to your questions that you have tonight. So we're going to transition a little bit. I heard you said something about, state level, local level, and that kind of led me to think about our legislation.
Hmm.
Um, and that brings us to what many voters are paying attention to,
Hmm.
lawmakers and what they're doing at both the state and local level. Because we know superintendent doesn't work in isolation, you
Right.
must be willing to work with the General Assembly, governors, school boards, and our local districts.
Hmm.
How would you describe your approach working with legislators, even when you disagree on policies?
It's all about building relationships and being a leader in the school district. That's what it takes. Like there are people that I work with in a leadership position, whether it's a teacher or a fellow administrator. We didn't always agree, but the biggest thing with that is having that relationship with them to talk it out. Like how can we come to like a compromise, meet in the middle to
Mhm.
do what's best for kids, what's needed for the mission. And so I've been traveling all 20 or all 46 counties and building relationships with school board members, with local elected officials, like the mayors, council members, and then our state representatives. And not just Democratic representatives, Republican representatives as well. Because with building these relationships, it allows us to have those conversations to where we can compromise and or come to an agreement to do what's best for our students, to do what's best in their best interest, to meet
Absolutely.
that mission and vision.
And the one thing you said about Democrats and Republicans, when we look at those things, these are individuals that may view policies different, one
Hmm.
from the other, parties. But
Hmm.
at the end of the day, these are still individuals who
Hmm.
still have a mission, who still have a vision. And I think sometimes when we could stray away from parties and
Hmm.
think about the best interest in this regards of our education, I think we all can move a little further because we're not looking to put our parties in place. We're looking at the best interests of what we are serving in front of us. And right now, it is our education system. So I
Hmm.
appreciate you pointing that out. I also want to go back to what could also be some recent debates around curriculum,
Mm.
um, school choice, teacher pay,
Hmm.
the rights of parents,
Mm.
which have gained sometimes a lot of friction or tension, I should say, online and even at the State House.
Hmm.
How would you navigate that if that was a bill, perhaps, or a legislation conversation while still keeping students at the center?
So you're asking about the parent rights bill or
Yeah, so we're talking. Well, so I'm asking about the debates that people may have on curriculums,
so
school
all of
choice.
it? You're talking about
Yes, right.
okay, because each one is a big Like that's loaded. That's a loaded question when you lump them all together. Um, but I think the biggest thing to remember is, as state superintendent of education, my job is to support, advocate, and provide resources. Um, of course, I help create the policy and um, working with the legislatures, like I told you, with building relationships. But the biggest thing that I have to remember as state superintendent is, how can I support and provide resources to make sure our students are getting what they need? How can I, you know, have town halls with local superintendents to make sure that the parents are heard?
Okay.
Because one of the things that I see missing is that communication between the parents and their local superintendent and their local school board. There's a lot of disrespect happening with the school board towards parents, with the school board towards teachers. And the current superintendent right now is not, there's no oversight. And I can say that because I've seen what goes on in board meetings, not just here in my district, but as I travel, like I said, I've been to different board meetings in different counties. And I'm not saying they're all like that, but there are a lot of school boards and superintendents that are not listening to the parents. And so they need their voices heard,
Mm.
whether the school board agrees with them or the superintendent agrees with them or not. Parents are frustrated. They just want what's best, especially parents who have kids with special needs. They are not being listened to. And so, as superintendent, that's something that I plan to change. I'm going to hold town hall meetings in different areas to make sure people's voices are heard, and not just to get elected. I'm not going to just come in to the town halls during election time. No, I will be out and about my whole tenure. People will see me and I'll be listening, and we'll be making adjustments, trying to do what's best for our kids so they can grow. And part of that is listening to the parents, listening to the community, because it's going to take all of us working together to elevate public education in South Carolina from 43rd to 1st.
Thank you. Thank you. I appreciate that. So let's talk about, or let's transition into leadership. How would you describe your leadership style when you're talking about managing large systems?
Mm. So I like to build relationships. I like to build a positive culture, and service. Service is very important to me, being that servant leader. And as far as leading the organization, I'm not one of those people who like to micromanage, but I do like to set a mission and a vision and hold people accountable to those expectations. So that's how I've led in the past. And so that's how I'm going to continue to lead in this position, or
Okay,
in the state superintendent position.
sure. You can claim it as your. So, how would you say you would balance? I know you said what you've done in the past, but now, obviously, writing policies being presented to you, you're dealing on a larger scale. How would you balance policy, people, and performance?
How would I balance policy, people?
Policy, people, and performance.
Oh, policy, people, and performance.
Yes.
Okay. So, first, with the policy, that sets the expectation, right? And then, as far as people, just holding people accountable, making sure that, and again, I'm not saying I'm going to be, micromanaging. It's basically going to, I'm sorry, my grandson's at the door. I was, I tried to be quiet and I snuck up here, but he found out that I was here. So I apologize. Um, but as far as policy sets the expectation, managing the people, hold on. Carla.
Again, you all, if
Sorry.
you are just tuning in, we ask that you drop your questions in the comments area. And we are here tonight again with Miss Sylvia Wright as she is seeking offers for your next South Carolina superintendent. So if you have any questions, please drop them in the comment section so we can hear from you. But we ask that you come on in and tune in right here, broadcasting results with Rouse.
Okay. I'm so sorry about that. Um, but managing the people, and again, I'm not trying to go in and, micromanage. It's just being there, let them know I'm there for support, hearing from them, because it's what I don't want to be is that leader that just gives like the policies and then doesn't follow up and see how it's going, in the system. How's it working? Is it benefiting? Is it not? What's working well? What needs to change? But in order to do that, it takes conversation, discussion, and just being out in the field.
So I want to go into kind of more some key issues. And I know I mentioned earlier about um, the students, teacher pay, and parents' rights. Um, it's often said that leadership shows up more clearly in challenging when you're addressing challenging situations. And so I want to begin with teacher support.
Mm, mm-hmm,
Because educators, as we know, are the backbone of the education system in which you
mm-hmm.
have been in for many years. What are your solutions when it comes to recruitment and retaining qualified educators?
What I see as far as recruitment is number one, the narrative is very negative when it comes to teachers. I remember I was talking to a new teacher group at the College of Charleston, and they were saying how they toured the State House, and a representative was like, "Why do you want to be a teacher?" To teachers who are, we barely have people who want to join, be in the education, and that's the tone or what you ask them. So not just that, but also just the narrative. Like teachers are being painted as like the enemy. They're being disrespected. So why would anyone want to go into that? So the first thing we have to do is change the narrative about teachers and education. The second piece of that is we have to we have to strengthen our teacher pipeline, our homegrown pipeline. And I know we have teacher cadet in middle school and high school, but I not only want to strengthen those pathways, I want to, and I'm going to create a compact with our universities and technical colleges. And in exchange for 5 years of teaching, we will pay the tuition for people who want to go pursue education. That takes away student loans. And in addition to this, increasing the starting salary to $60,000 starting. And again, the legislature, they're already moving in this direction. So I would just continue to work with the legislatures to, increase that. And then as far as the working conditions to help retain teachers, that ties into leadership, that ties into issues of school safety, and it also ties into like the paperwork, the administrative responsibilities that are placed on teachers. And I know firsthand, I remember there was a school that I worked at where we had to like write out detailed lesson plans. And it
Hmm.
was for me it was just a checkbox because I never followed it. But I had my little binder on the desk so that way when they came in for observations, I had it in like the little the page protectors so they could just, flip through. Yep. I had my standards up on the board, I remember having to write down like if a kid was misbehaving, I had to write down like what they were doing, like keep a journal and a log, and all of that, piles on because I'd have to take time during my planning instead of grading papers or preparing a lesson or things like that. My time was spent on these administrative things,
Hmm.
and so the thing for me is how can we reduce or cut down on these administrative things for teachers? How can we make our schools safer for teachers and for our students? And it's not just against intruders. Class sizes. We need smaller class sizes because when you have like these large class sizes, that's safety. That's a safety issue. Student misbehavior. All student behavior or all behavior is motivated, whether it's good or bad behavior. It's motivated by something. So improving access to like mental health counselors and or school counselors, school psychologists. We need to have more professionals available for our kids to talk it out, to see what these issues are and be able to address them. Because, like I said, that misbehavior is motivated by something. So, how do we um, help the child? Because again, our job is to grow and make sure we're preparing them for that future.
Gotcha. Thank you for that. I was just going to lead into our students as we were initially talking about our teachers, but I just want to go back to our teachers just because of conversations sometimes being at different meetings, and you often hear teachers say that they feel unheard,
Mm-hmm.
they feel
Mm-hmm.
overworked, and just as you mentioned, some of them feel very unappreciative.
Mm-hmm.
And we do want to say thank you to our teachers that are genuine, sincere about the education and the future of our young people, because we do have some people out there that do value the impact for
Yeah.
our students. So we do want to give kudos to the educators that are really, really pouring into our young people.
Yeah.
And I appreciate you wanting to kind of streamline a balance for them.
Mm-hmm.
But most importantly, the students. Um, we talk about student success as if we talk about test scores.
Mm.
And so I want to pose the question to you, what do student success looks like beyond test scores and standardized testing?
My vision, because I want to get rid of the standardized end of the year testing, and it can be done. Florida did it in 2022. So getting rid of standardized testing will like really change like our the culture that we have right now. Um, but to get back to your question about student success, for me, it's like you said, they're not a test score or a test number. Student success for me looks like, are they enjoying the experience, the learning experience? Do they enjoy school? Are they growing? So one of the systems that we use has before or the beginning of the year, middle of the year, and end of the year testing, right? We can see what the strengths and weaknesses were for our students. And so we were able to create an intervention, or I created an intervention, work together with people to implement this intervention. But with this, we were able to create target lessons. And this goes also to that individualized learning plan that we can create to meet kids where they are and to help them grow.
Hmm.
And so for me, student success is, are they enjoying the learning process? Are they enjoying school? And are they growing?
Very much important. I heard you touch on it briefly about the process of Florida. Do you mind going back there, and how would that model be beneficial to South Carolina?
Right. So in 2022, they got rid of the end of the year testing and they moved to a progression monitoring model. And for me, what I want to call it is it's going to be our growth model. Because, like I said, it's all about growing kids, meeting them where they're at, and then growing them. And so it's similar to what Florida did. So basically, it's that beginning, they test in the beginning, the middle of the year, and end of the year. And it's just progress monitoring, seeing where the kids are and helping them grow.
Okay. Okay. Thank you for kind of explaining that. Because it's always good, to search around or to
Mm-hmm.
partner, I should say, with other districts, even if it's out of state, just to see how it's working for them. And if the
Mm-hmm.
model is similar and fits what your area, which is education here in South Carolina, could benefit for, why not?
Right.
Because what we want to see, like you said, is our kids continuing to grow. We see where
Mm-hmm.
they are, we see where we want them to be, and we know truly what the future will hold for them to get there. And so we want to make sure that we are bringing in things that are being beneficial for them. So thank
Mm-hmm.
you for explaining that. So as we kind of shift a little bit from outcomes with the students, I want to kind of shift to what seems to be more realistic here in the world and talk about rural and urban
Mm.
school systems. Me myself coming from a very, 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 very rural school system, I want to kind of know what will be your plan to bridge the gap between rural and urban school systems.
So I will say I've worked in every school setting, and I think the saddest thing was the neglect in our rural areas. And as I travel the 46 counties and see in the rural areas schools abandoned and shut down, like their community schools, um, And then the buildings, like the school that I was at, they're in a new school now, but and I'm not saying like the mold was in the school I was in, but what I'm just hearing about the conditions that the students in the rural areas have to learn in. It's that neglect. So what I plan to do, number one, is make sure we're strategic and intentional with the money that is being spent on our rural initiative,
Okay.
um, rural improvement initiative. I think that's what it's called. But right now there is money allotted to improving education in the rural areas.
Hmm.
And I was looking at the budget, and millions went to international teachers, and only 31,500 went to like new teachers. Money went to improving websites. Um, and the reason why I highlight these items from that budget is we need to be more intentional and strategic. What are the needs?
Hmm.
What, because each need is different. Even though you have your rural area here in Berkeley County is different than your rural area in Aiken or in Horry County, or because Horry County has rural areas too. There are
Right.
rural spots all over this state that are being left behind and neglected.
Mm.
But to the point, they have different needs. They need different resources. They need different supports. So we need to have those conversations instead of throwing money at things, instead of putting band-aids on things. We need to find out what the needs are and target that. Um, that's how we're going to start elevating our rural area. Because right now, I feel like no one's listening to what the rural areas need. They're just saying, they're telling them what they need.
Right.
But we have to quit telling the rural areas what they need, and we need to listen to what they need and then provide the resources and support for that. So that's my plan.
Listen, I appreciate, man, I appreciate you. And I'm sure viewers are out there, they appreciate you just breaking it down just a little bit in regards to the funding that is out there for our rural areas. And you all, viewers, if you're listening and stay in a rural area in which your students are attending schools, there are funding.
Hmm. And I
There
can
are
show
funding.
if you need me to show the report, that budget, just let me know. I'll,
Okay. Okay.
yeah.
And I appreciate that. So again, I do want to ask that if you have any questions, please drop them in the comments area. If you have any for Miss Wright, she's definitely given out a lot of information, and we probably would be here for another episode if we would go into details in regards to the information. But I do want to ask because while you pointed out there are funding for rural areas, we
Hmm.
know sometimes things are limited.
Hmm.
And while you're mentioning like, hey, there is I don't want to say a bill because I don't want to misspeak,
Hmm.
but if they're funding, or there's a pot of funding for rural areas,
Hmm.
and we're using it on websites and using it on
Hmm.
international, and we're still talking about teacher pay and the limited stuff that we have for our students in the classrooms. When things are limited, what do you or how do you prioritize funding for the greatest impact?
Mm. So again, that would have to go back to what are the needs. That comes with conversation. Because if I sit here and tell you some of the things that I think need to be done, that's me again trying to tell the rural areas, what they need. And like I said, we have not done a good job. And when I say we, I mean like like just our state has not done a good job with listening to what is actually needed in our rural areas. And there's another funding piece too. It's grants. So when you work in a rural area, everybody knows you wear like a million hats in the district office. So they might not have a grant writer. And so one of the things that I want to do as superintendent is deploy my grant writers to help these rural areas get more grants. That's another way they can get more funding, federal funding to help them. But again, it's not just about giving them money. It's finding out what the needs are because we have to be strategic and intentional. Finding out what resources and support they need and provide that. That's how we're going to elevate our rural areas.
Yeah. Thank you for
Hmm.
that. Because I was going to mention that, another issue that often sometimes arises, whether that be online, social media, or just out in the community, is who has access, uh,
Mm.
who has, the opportunities, and who gets left behind. And most time it is our rural areas,
Hmm.
as we
Hmm.
know, that oftentimes gets left behind. So I want to point out something you mentioned about building school structures and how do we align the shortage of staffing. And so, when districts do have aging buildings,
Hmm.
staffing shortage, transportation needs, as we
Hmm.
sometimes run into, and even that technology gaps, prioritizing things can compete quickly because now
Yeah.
you're trying to decide which one do I maneuver to do first over the other one.
Right.
How do you ensure that in our underserved communities are not asked to wait until another generation for an opportunity?
Mm,
We often get that. Could you just wait? How
yeah.
would you address that? Or how could you address that?
So again, like I told you, I'll be around in communities. I'm not, after I get elected, I'm not going to disappear. And so while I'm out in communities, that's also part of holding people accountable. That's
Mhm.
also a part of listening to what the needs are in the community. So if, for example, a priority is trying to think of something that um, you mentioned bus drivers. That's a big thing because I know firsthand that there's a bus driver shortage in the rural areas because I had to sit in the gym with kids almost an hour after school because we didn't have enough bus drivers for routes. So instead of these kids going home eating cereal, watching cartoons, they're sitting in the gym, uh, ready to go home. So that's one of the things. How can we increase pay? How can we increase incentives using that money to increase incentives to attract more bus drivers
Right.
so we can fill these routes? Um, and so, again, me having that experience, that's something that I know needs to be fixed now. And the parents can see that it's done once we implement these initiatives and have more bus drivers and the kids are home like right after school. So I guess to answer that question, it would be what measures? What measures will I put in place? Which again, if it's bus drivers, the measure would be the increase in bus drivers to fill those routes and the less kids being left at school an hour after the bell rings.
Or in
Um,
the rural area, getting up extremely early
mm, yes, that's
to get
right.
on the bus and still have to be on the bus for almost an hour or two before you even get to school.
That's
That's
facts.
another issue that we run into in our rural areas. Um,
Yeah. And with the
so,
school merging, because the one thing that bothers me, because I hear about the merging of schools in these rural areas, right? And so part of that, the kids have to travel, they have to get up early. I heard someone told me that kindergartners are up 5 a.m. at a bus stop. How? How is that okay? Like I know that, merging the schools, they talk about money and budgets and all that, but has that been really looked at? The impact of school mergers in our rural areas and closing down community schools?
mhm.
So that's something that I'm going to look at um, and do sort of like an audit once I get in office.
I love the way you're just claiming it.
I have plans, Turquoise. I have plans.
Hey, I love it. I love it. But I want to go into, as we were talking about, we talked about a little bit about yourself. Then we jumped in about your leadership approach and what that looks like for people to get to know you a little bit. And then we kind of transition into teachers. And we just talked about the students and the access to resources. I want to move into, because while all of that is good, of the element of building the education system,
Mhm.
also want to talk about the community and the collaboration of it because I also feel like that's another area that is also important. Um, so I want to shift into the role of community and partnership and how that drives results. So how do you plan to engage with parents, community, and other organization in the education process?
So, as state superintendent of education, what I want to do is make it a priority for our schools to partner with community. And that could be the business, it could be like the churches with after school or mentoring programs, businesses, for example. Um, they can come in and be like special guests and talk about like their career, like career, what do you call it? Like guest speakers, reading to students. Um, I know. In certain high schools, they have credit unions set up in their school where the students work in that credit union, and it's like real world.
Mm.
So these are all the things, the pieces that I want our community to become involved with, because right now we're working in silos. We have school, home, and then community. But in order for us to elevate from 43rd to 1st, we all have to work together. And part of that is, how can we, if there's retired teachers in the community, how can they be connected with the elementary school to help with a one-on-one reading, to help students read, or one-on-one to be mentors for students. So I have a I have a plan for implementing community partners, but the biggest thing is how we need to communicate it, because
Yes.
there's communities. I've spoken to, like I said, I've been all around the state, and people want to get involved. The community is ready. They just don't know how. So
Gotcha.
providing that communication, that partnership, like clarifying that, how can we all over the state, not just, a pilot of one area. People are ready to go. It's
Okay.
now just making sure, like, the local superintendent and the school district create a plan and communicate that to the community, and then let's get it going.
I love it. Listen, you so geared up, you ready to
Yeah, I'm
get a
ready. I'm
plan, but you
ready.
gotta hold it. You gotta hold it. You gotta hold it. Can't we can't give them all of it right now. But I do want to talk about. I want to get a chance to talk about you, your leadership, and what sets you apart in this race.
Okay.
Um, Again, you all, we are here broadcasting results with Rouse, and I truly thank each of you that have tuned in thus far. And if you have any questions for Ms. Wright, please put them in the comments area. I'm periodically looking over it just to make sure we don't miss any. I appreciate those that have commented so far. Shout out for you, Miss Sylvia. You taught Miss Jennifer White, said that this is amazing. And she said that you taught her while she was at CSU and thoroughly enjoyed it.
Oh, okay.
And she says,
Thank
God
you.
blessings for you on this journey, Dr. Wright. So I want to share that
Hmm.
to you. We have Miss Bradley that definitely says community involvement is important. And again, these are people that are either you taught or still in education or heavily involved in their community. So I just wanted to share that while people
Thank
release
you.
their comments. Viewers, please continue to drop your comments or questions there for Miss Wright. And so we'll periodically look over and ask them or share your comments as well. But I want to go back to what sets you apart. Viewers, I do want you to know that this seat that Miss Wright has spoke clearly of, while since we've been on this broadcast, she's claimed the seat. But I do want to be very transparent with
Yeah.
you all, that there are two other individuals, or two other candidates, I should say, that are running for this seat, which is the South Carolina Superintendent of Education. But while we I share that, I want to talk about Sylvia, because Sylvia is on this platform tonight. And so I want to ask you to share with myself and the viewers what sets you apart in this race from your opponents.
Okay. So first, I'll start with the incumbent. Um, the current state superintendent, Weaver, has never been a teacher. She's never worked in a school system. She's more of a policy person. And there's certain policies, for example, with the science of reading that's been implemented. She is just basically following what Mississippi did, but she doesn't have any background in education to truly understand the impact of what she's implemented. For example, if a student does not pass SC Ready in 3rd grade, they're held back. The issue with that is, if, and for example, I've seen this in the rural area, if they don't have qualified teachers in front of them, if they have a long-term sub every, the whole school year, or if they're looking at a teacher from a screen and they have a teacher assistant in the room and they're not paying attention, they're not getting the learning necessary to be successful on SC Ready. So we're basically punishing students for adult issues. And so having someone in the classroom like me, or in the school system like me, who's seen what's happening, that's some policy that I wouldn't write, because I know that we would be punishing kids for our adult issues. And so that's what sets me apart from the incumbent. is just the experience in education and being a teacher and being qualified, not getting a 6 months degree, but that's a whole nother story. But what sets me apart from the Democratic, my Democratic opponent, is that she has, and she's, this is what her platform is, or what she's running on, is that she's a teacher still in the classroom. And I'm a teacher as well. I'm a certified teacher. I still have my license. Like I can go into the classroom right now and teach if I wanted to, because I'm still a teacher. But this position requires a broader perspective. I have that classroom level experience as well, but I also have school level experience. I've seen it from that perspective, and district level experience, and I've seen it from that perspective. I've also worked with people on those levels. How I worked with my teacher friends on on a teacher level is different than when I am the school coordinator or school leader. And especially when I'm a district leader. I'm not saying I'm all that. What I'm saying is there's an accountability
Right.
level that you have, because teacher to teacher, can't hold you accountable for anything. I'm teaching my class, you're teaching your class. But as far as school level, it's different, especially when I'm coordinator and there's an expectation and we're trying to um, move kids forward. If Do you get what I'm saying? So it's a
Right.
different type of relationship with people when you're in leadership. And if you've never been in a leadership position, like I said, South Carolina has been at the bottom for the past 20 years. We don't have time for someone who does not have leadership experience to try to figure it out.
Mm.
We need someone who has the leadership experience, who's worked within the system, and is ready to go day one. And that's what sets me apart from my Republican opponent and my Democratic opponent.
Thank you, thank you, thank you for that. One thing I do want to go back into when you said about, you use the example as third graders and taking that test, and sometimes we find, which is to be true, that sometimes that could be a whole year of either a child's, pretty much have a teacher online, and
Mm-hmm.
or if that's a substitute teacher. And while that is great to have either or of those, we also have to ask the question, is this student really getting what they want? And I'm glad you mentioned that, at the end of the day, we're not taking away from what the child know or don't know, but I
Mm-hmm.
also feel like we're doing a disservice to the child if we are holding them back based on what's on
Mm-hmm.
paper and we're not providing them with the resources. It's okay to send a bunch of papers home and tell them to do it, but if they don't know what to do, and I know oftentimes we tend to say, every child's first teacher is their parent, and I get that too, but we also have to look at, in a lot of these areas where a lot of our kids are growing up in, is with still with grandparents.
Mm-hmm.
And
Mm-hmm.
we're not taking that away from any situation, but we also want to make sure at the end of the day we could truly say we're setting our students up for success. And so I
Right.
appreciate you just kind of talking on that just a little bit in regards to what makes sense, pretty much. So
Yes.
so
Yes.
so thank you for that, um, and pretty much thank you for telling us what sets you apart from your opponent. But what I do want the viewers to know, um, in regards to what sets Sylvia apart, she mentioned about her Republican opponent as well as her Democrat opponent. And so I want you all to shift with me just a little bit so that we can understand the voting process for Sylvia. So coming up in June, which is considered the primary, Sylvia will only be on the ballot with her Democratic opponent. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Sylvia is asking for your support so she can move to the general in November. And at that time, she would be on the ballot with her Republican opponent. So you're not going to look in June to have three names on the ballot. It would only be two individuals' names. And from there, they will move on to the general. So I'm going to give her time to kind of come back to that. But I just felt like I wanted to point that out while you were kind of talking about what sets you apart so that people can understand when they look at the ballot and see, your name. Of course, if that's you want them to click the right name,
The
right?
right, the right
The
name.
right name. But I also just felt like, it's important for people to understand the
Mhm.
voting process when it comes to elections. So I just wanted to definitely point that out. Um, if voters um, hear candidates sometimes make similar promises, right?
Hmm.
What questions should they ask to determine who truly delivers? When you talk about what sets you apart and your
Right.
other opponents.
So it's not necessarily a question. It's more of their action, because
Okay.
people can talk, like you said, all day,
Mm.
right, about what they're going to do. So I challenge anyone to look at my past, look at my Facebook, look at my resume, talk to people who've worked with me, and you can see the results speak for themselves. I've been YPD director. I've worked with the youth. I've, helped with, um, like feeding the homeless. There are different things that I've done, and I'm not sitting here bragging about my works. That's not what I'm saying, because I did all this before I even put my name in to run. So that's what I mean by look at what I've done before I even decided to, because that's who I am. You
Mm.
will know a person by their actions, what they do. So it's not just about asking the right question. Do your research. Find out, what this person or what people are doing before they even decided to run, and even maybe while they're running, and after after they get the position, look and see what they do.
He almost had me puzzled for a second. I'm just nodding my head like, hmm.
But it's actions.
It's
Actions
fair.
speak louder than words.
It's definitely, definitely, definitely fair. I truly appreciate that.
Hmm.
Cause yeah, action does speak. And which leads me to, we have to also understand how we planned out elections and when we're seeking unity for our
Hmm.
communities, for our state level, for you, for the education system. And so I want to ask a question. How do you plan to unify supporters of other candidates? Because when you move from June to November, you're wanting those
Hmm.
supporters that might have didn't supported you. You still want them to support you. So
Hmm.
how would you prepare to unify supporters of other candidates if you become the nominee in June?
Thank you for that question. Because the biggest thing for me is we don't teach Republican kids, we don't teach Democrat, Independent, Green. Kids are kids. And
Amen.
so that's my message. Because we all, regardless of our party, want what's best for our kids. And that's my mission. That's my goal. I don't have that political Project 2025 agenda trying to indoctrinate and all of that. That's not my agenda. My goal is to make sure we first of all, we have our mission and our vision. We're all heading in the right direction to grow kids and
Hmm.
prepare them for a future, to elevate education and to elevate South Carolina, our economy, because they're the future.
Right.
And so that's going to be my message to unify us. It's not about party. And I've already started building relationships with people who are not Democrats, people who are Republicans, people who are independents, working party, all that. I've already been talking to them, building relationships,
Hmm.
because again, it's going to take all of us working together to elevate education. We can no longer um, operate in a divided South Carolina. Um, Individualism is killing. It's going to kill our economy. So
Hmm.
we have got to work together. And so that's my message.
Thank you. Thank
Hmm.
you. Definitely for that. So again, you all, thank you for tuning in. And if you have questions or comments, please drop them in the comments, and I'll periodically looking over so I can make sure I hopefully don't miss anyone. Um, I do have one here. It says, Dr. Wright, if elected, will you ensure that each district has tools to help children that have ADHD, autism, and etc.?
For sure. So I actually want to reform how we do special education here in South Carolina. Right now, we operate basically on like one continuum of service. We're basically putting kids with special needs into a classroom, a general ed classroom, without the proper supports and support. So I respect that question, because they must know what's happening in our schools right now. Um, so I do want to, like I said, reform how we're doing special education by talking to the people who are doing the work. I already have sort of like an advisory committee that I'm putting together to see how we can improve education or special education, those services, and provide supports for parents as well. not just the students and the teachers, but also the parents, providing everybody with the supports and looking at other models in other states. How are they doing special education? So that's where I'm at right now. Just know that that's part of my vision. My plan is to
Mhm.
reform or special education in South Carolina.
Okay. So I want to go to what is considered real talk right quick. Like just quick questions. While we
Uh-oh.
might have already asked them already, we might have already talked to them before, but those that might have didn't heard it early on will have a chance again to kind of recap some of the things that we talk about. So, what's one word to describe your leadership style?
Servant leader.
Hmm. What's the biggest challenge you feel like schools are facing right now?
Mm. Gosh, that's loaded because there's so many things.
Or you don't have to pick
Initially,
one.
what
I'll
comes
give
to
you a
mind is
chance.
resources. If I'm only using one word, resources.
Okay. What's one policy you would review immediately?
You said what?
one po-
Like take away a policy that take away.
one policy you would review immediately, whether it's
Oh,
taken away
review
or review.
or take
Yes.
away that book banning policy. I
Could
push
you?
it statewide because statewide it should never have been a statewide policy. It should have
Okay.
been a local. It needs to stay at the local level. So that
Okay.
regulation 43-170, make pushing that back the book review, um, that back to the local level and not the state determining which books are approved and disapproved.
Okay. So if you would, I'm gonna give you a few minutes on that one because I do want people to understand. I think oftentimes when we hear about education, sometimes people think about more just curriculum and what happens
Mm.
in the classroom, but we also have to learn or understand the policy side. So if you would, could you just recap on that particular policy a little bit more so that people will understand your reasoning behind it?
Okay. So with regulation 43-170, that was the guise for this policy was um, making sure that kids don't have access to inappropriate like sexual content, right? Which I'm a parent, I'm a mom, I'm a grandma. Like, I agree with that. I don't want my children to have access to information that's not developmentally appropriate. The issue with this regulation is that it was weaponized. It was weaponized to limit women's topics about women's history. It was
Mm,
weaponized to limit topics about African American or Black history, which is American history, but the story, the full story. It was weaponized to limit or cut off, to whitewash the full story, so that way the struggle piece was taken out, so that way you can talk about how Martin Luther King Jr. was a preacher and those facts, but the struggle, like how he was put in jail and all those things, like that's the stuff that's being pushed away. But again, this regulation under the guise of you know what I said earlier, but it's being weaponized. And so that's my issue with it. And not only has it been weaponized, again, it took power away from the local level. So we
mm,
need to books, let me say it this way, books that were banned statewide, there might be local school districts, because each area is different, to ban the book for everyone and having the different uniqueness that we have in South Carolina. That's part of that authoritarianism, and we are not we're a democracy. People should have the option. Local school districts, they would have parents and teachers or some type of committee in their local area to make those decisions because they live there. These
mm.
are the It's their community, their parents, their kids. So they make those decisions, not the state making a decision for everyone. So that's my issue with that regulation.
Gotcha. Thank you for explaining that. And again, I wanted her to go a little bit more in detail so that you, as viewers, when we talk about the education system, we can understand the policy side to it because that is a very heavy side that we don't often get to, I guess, to say, participate in as much as we should because it is our right, as she just mentioned, as citizens, as parents, as community members, and oftentimes they make choices for us as people on the state level when it
Hmm.
should very much be a preference locally.
Mm-hmm.
So that's why it's very important to understand these policies when we're having, whether that's council meetings, school board meetings,
Mm-hmm.
any meetings, and they're putting out all of these preference. We got to make sure that they're not doing that based on them. We got to make sure that they're doing it based on us because we have a right to determine what we want. Although it may come off like we don't trust that we do have a right for that.
Mm-hmm.
So I
Mm-hmm.
appreciate you kind of going back into that. Another question is, as a leader you admire and why? Who is the leader that you admire and why?
The first name that came to mind is Maya Angelou, and just her. Oh, do I go into?
No,
Oh yeah,
you
you
can't.
said
You
and
can't.
why?
No, go ahead.
My mind was on that one word. Like I listened to. I'm like a real follower. You said one word, so I'm going to hear you. But yes, Maya Angelou, and just she's inspirational. I don't know if you've heard her story about, how she was silent and how a teacher like helped bring her out of that space she was in because of that trauma she had.
Mhm.
But it's a very powerful story. And she's just an inspiration with her words, and just I want to encourage people and uplift and inspire people the way that she does.
I would say kudos because she's actually one of my all-time favorites as well. So
Ah.
yes. So I'm gonna say a phrase to you, and just kind of want you to kind of put your own thought to it. And it says, every child in South Carolina deserves what?
Access to the best future available, like possible, and that's through education. So they deserve access, opportunity, and access. Education opens those doors for them. So providing them with opportunity and access so they can open those doors, whatever door it may be,
Okay.
they're ready for it.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. So we're going to transition you all again. If there's any more questions, please drop them in the comments area. If you have comments, please drop them there. I will shout out that we have it at Sue C1395 says, Sylvia, you are all that. You have a
Thank you,
supporter
Sue.
over there. But
Oh,
I
goodness.
appreciate you asking those quick random questions because we understand being in the public light, oftentimes people are going to come up to you and ask you those right moment questions, and sometimes we don't get to think them all the way through, and we have to have those response quickly to be able to come back with. So I appreciate you just being kind of put on the spot and willing to ask those questions, because what I
Hmm.
also found in doing that is it loosens you up as a leader, but it also allows the viewers to see you outside of being a policy maker,
Hmm.
a person that has to, be dictated into the systems of education. They see you, and so I
Hmm.
appreciate
Hmm.
you for engaging with that piece to it. But those questions also kind of reveal the heart behind the platform.
Mm.
They see Sylvia. They see the right person in the right seat.
Yes.
So as we close, I do want to give you the floor to
Okay.
speak directly to the voters across South Carolina, for those that are viewing and for those that will come back later and tune into this. But two questions I want to ask before you
Okay.
give some remarks is, why should the people of South
Mm.
Carolina choose you?
Thank you for this question. This is one of the top 10 or 5 questions that I get. So, like I said, South Carolina is ranked 20 for over, or sorry, ranked 43rd for over 20 years. And so it's time for a change. And I'm the right person for this because I not only have the educational experience, I actually have like the leadership experience. I've been in the trenches in the classroom. I've I've been a student here in South Carolina. So I graduated from South Carolina High School, from Fort Dorchester High School. I've been a teacher and I've been at every single level. And I actually have a plan for improving education in South Carolina, for elevating us from 43rd to first. Um, and so that's what makes me the most qualified. Not only that, I'm personally invested. My
Mhm.
grandson will be entering into public education in the next 2 years. So this isn't just a position that I want to, it's not about a position or a title for me. I am seriously invested in improving education. And that's why I am the best qualified person for this position.
I thought you was going to say the right person.
I should have. I should have. Make the right choice.
So I do want to ask as well, and again, before I allow you to kind of share some feedback as well, tell us how, or tell the people how they connect with you, how they can support your campaign and learn more.
Okay, perfect. Because that was going to be my spiel, actually. My website is right2026sc.com. And on that website, you'll find more about my policy priorities and my platform. Also, I need volunteers. So you can sign up to volunteer. I need donations. Any amount will help. Just, I need donations. It adds up. So don't think what you give is too small. And, and I need your vote on June 9th. And I have a countdown on my calendar as well to remind you. There's also early voting that, that week before, but definitely on June 9th. So on my website, you'll find that information. You'll find more information about my work experience. I have my resume posted on there. So that way people can look at my work experience and links to my social media. So if you really are looking for more information about me, please visit my website at right2026sc.com.
Thank you, thank you, thank you again for that. I am going to share some voter registration deadlines and date, so that everyone could be advised to it, uh, and make sure we are still canvassing for individuals that are not registered to get registered. So the voters registration deadline is May 8th. We need everyone to be registered by that date if you're going to do it in person. And you have to May 10th if you decide to do it online. And the deadline to register by mail for the primaries is May 11th. And again, all of this information you can find off of the South Carolina Election Commission website. You can also go to SC votes as well for more information. Is there anything else that you want to share, Ms. Sylvia, before we close out for this evening?
I just want to thank you for your platform and allowing me to be a part of your platform. I want to thank everyone who took the time to, join us tonight and listen and ask questions for the encouragement. I appreciate that so much. So thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you. And again, thank you for joining tonight's platform and sharing your vision and your perspective. It's very engaging. It allow us to get more into the questions and get to know you a little bit so that people can understand why they're voting for the right
The
individuals
right
as they
choice.
move to the June primary. So you all heard it from her herself. Um, we thank you for tuning in this evening. We thank you, Dr. Wright, for joining us. I know this is a busy time when we're out campaigning, canvassing. So, as she mentioned to you all, if you all would like to volunteer, support her campaign by donation, or just want to learn more, you can definitely visit the website so that you can do so. And as we close tonight, I'm reminded how important education is to our young people and to the generation, to the future. And as she mentioned to you about her grandson that will be entering into the school system in the next 2 years, very important. I share the same sentiments as I have nephews that are already in the education system. And
Mhm.
as much as I want it for them, I also want it for every other child around. And so
Mhm.
tonight, I'm asking you, the viewers, the citizens of South Carolina, to join me, Turquoise Rouse, the citizen here, as I stand before you, or should I say, sit before you. I would like to announce that I myself is endorsing Sylvia Wright for South Carolina superintendent, and I ask that you all stand in support with me, for me, to her, as we be prayerful about this journey.
Mm.
We know that it is a must that we seek God first in everything that we do, but we see the importance of education in our school system, what it has done, and will what we look forward to it doing. So again, I myself, Torquay Rouse, a citizen of South Carolina, is endorsing Sylvia Wright for our next superintendent for South Carolina, and I ask that you join me on board to do the same. We're looking for the right candidate at the ballot when it comes to early voting and also in June. So I thank you,
Thank you.
Sylvia, again
Thank
for
you.
willing to be a servant, to stand out there for our young people and for our education system. Uh, as always, I wish you well, and I'm here in support of you. And to you, all viewers, I ask that you do the same. If you're not here in South Carolina but know somebody that is, I ask that you tell them to vote the right last name. Until next time, we thank you all for tuning in. Thank you again, Sylvia, for being a part of the platform. We ask that you all continue to join us on Monday at 7 o'clock. We'll be back with our next guest. If you all would love to advertise, if you'd like to take a seat at the table, please reach out. We're doing advertising for any businesses, for your individual, for candidates like herself. If you want to get advertising slots so that throughout the broadcast, your advertisement is being screamed as it was on the bottom, you can definitely do so. So thank you all again for broadcasting results for Rouse as we took a seat at the table with Miss Sylvia Wright, your next candidate for South Carolina superintendent. And I ask that you come and support with me as we move forward to support her as our next 2026 candidate for this position. God bless you all. Until next time, we'll see you broadcasting results with Rouse.